focusing on Archibus today. We have some wonderful panelists and moderators, and we appreciate you signing up for this webinar. We're going to go through the agenda here real quick. We're going to do some introductions, and then Jeff Van Vliet from IMAGINiT will do an Archibus overview. I, myself, Bob Stephen, will go through current trends within the Archibus application and what we're seeing in return to office. James Castuccio will then do Archibus in government and its current trends. And then we'll turn it over to Kathy Cook and Heather Petit to talk about the County of San Bernardino's 20-year installation. And then we'll turn it over to Russ Catherman with the state of Montana, who's had several years of Archibus installation. And then we'll have questions and conclusions. We do want this to be an open type forum, so if you feel comfortable asking questions, unmuting yourselves, or asking questions by raising your hand or putting it in the chat, we're more than happy to do this. I'd actually like to hear your voice if you can do that. That'd be great. Moderators today are Jeff Van Vliet from IMAGINiT, Bob Stephen, myself from RSE, and James Castuccio from Infinaris. We also have Kathy Cook with the County of San Bernardino, Heather Petit with the County of San Bernardino, and Russ Catherman with the state of Montana. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Van Vliet and let him talk about the Archibus overview.
Thank you, Bob. So welcome everyone, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Archibus, Archibus falls into the I guess family of integrated workplace management systems, which is I think a fancy way of saying it does a little bit of everything. Archibus started out about 35 years ago as a space management tool, but then over time it has expanded and added additional functionality to where it now addresses pretty much almost all aspects of managing your facilities and organization. Starting with kind of there in the real top left corner, there are tools for managing your real estate portfolio, everything from leases, cost administration, forecasting, strategic financial analysis, things like that. Bottom left, you see there the space management activities. Archibus is one of just a handful of tools that has complete bidirectional integration with both AutoCAD and Revit. So those of you who are doing building information modeling in your organizations, Archibus certainly can work with you to consume that information as well. So we're talking about space inventory performance. You know, James and we'll be talking a little bit about kind of back to office things later on. So that certainly plays a key role in that. There are tools for asset management down at the bottom, maintenance things for building operations, preventative maintenance. We've got capital project management for budgeting, project management, commissioning, those types of things. And then finally up in the upper right corner, there are tools for sustainability and energy management. So a lot of those kind of and the good thing about these tools is that you'll see there in the graphic right in the middle, there's that circle, the integrated workplace management system. There's a single database, and you enter the data one time, hopefully, and then it can be consumed by all these different applications, which greatly reduces your data entry and hopefully reduces the inaccuracies that you may find associated with siloed systems. Next slide. I think that's it. Oh no, and then here you'll see kind of a broad range of different clients that are using Archibus. Among the three companies that you have on the call with us, we see we've got federal, state, and local government, county level governments, all doing various and sundry different things. I'd love to say everybody does everything, but I think Kathy and Heather are the only ones who do everything with Archibus, and they'll tell you a little bit about that. Go ahead, Bob.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to talk about the current Archibus trends. In the 23 years that I've been consulting with Archibus, the last 2.5, maybe 1.5 years, we're seeing an increase in hoteling and reservations, especially with the return to office. And we're also seeing a lot of sensors being installed and connected with Archibus. These sensors can be anywhere from infrared underneath the desk, cameras up on the ceilings, taking security badge scanning on the way in, tracking cell phone, all that kind of good stuff. We also have a lot of artificial intelligence. There's a lot of artificial intelligence coming forward in the camera type technology where we're able to identify head count, not necessarily the individual themselves, but head count. We can also identify laptops on a desk, phones, types of equipment that are in the room. And so this is really helping with asset inventory. Hoteling is a morning or afternoon or full day type activity where a person who would like to work from home the majority of their time, but occasionally want to come into the office and have a little touchdown space. There's an application for the staff at large called Workplace Services within Archibus that allows them on their phone to use a responsive design application to grab a hotel space that's identified within the application. It's a pretty slick little app. Reservations are a lot more robust. They are around conference rooms or workplace rooms, or in some hospital situations where we have sleep rooms or labs, things like that. But they can be reserved down to the minute, depending on how you set up the reservation. The reservation can also have preload and backload type of cleanup or setup, where a work request can automatically be set out for reservations as well as configuration of the space and amenities that are needed, and even cafe equipment. We now turn it over to James to talk about how the government is using Archibus these days.
Thank you, Bob. We work with federal, state, and local governments throughout the country, and things that we've noticed really within the Archibus realm and what people are using, what the governments are using Archibus for. Really, portfolio management, as you'll see as we talk to Kathy and Russ, they have a lot of real estate that they're responsible for. So really getting a handle on where their property is, their portfolio is, and what makes up that portfolio. From there, the assets have been critical to track, the preventive maintenance side of it, as well as condition assessment and forecasting the budgeting. Something that's interesting, and I'm sure everybody that's watching this has seen over the past year and a half, is while you have assets, people that are in the office, people are now moving to, or have moved to, a work from home, and really knowing, can you take assets from the building and let people take them home? Can you keep track of that? And those types of things have been really critical over the past 18 months. And then as people return back to the office, or the assets coming back, do you need to buy new assets? So asset management has been really hot within governments, and just managing really what they have and where they put it. And then as we get into the return to office side of this, as Bob had mentioned, from the hoteling and reservation side of things, the space management part of this, okay, one, do we have enough real estate or too much real estate? Is it the right real estate? Is it configured the right way? And when we bring people back in, are they going to be working a hybrid model where they're 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, full-time at home, full-time in the office, and being able to leverage the Archibus integrated workplace management system to help identify the spaces and let people self-book the spaces, so they can have a space when they come in. If they no longer have a full-time space to sit and work, they can at least book spaces and know that, one, it's going to be available for them, and two, that it's going to be sanitized and everything that goes with the preparation for that space.
James, I'd like to add on to something. This is Bob Stevens, to what you said. We had another client that when they sent everyone home during the pandemic, allowed them to take the equipment with them. In other words, laptops, mice, monitors, chairs. And corporate said, yeah, we don't care about tracking them, let them go. And the facilities manager said, heck no. And so he actually set up within Archibus the ability to check out the equipment on the way out the door. And he had estimated that they had out on the street about 1.1 million pieces of asset and equipment that they were easily able to track. And because of that, his department was honored as a forward-thinking department for being able to track those assets within the application. Thanks for letting me just add that in there.
Oh, thanks, Bob. That's great. And I guess to add on to that, one last piece of that with the assets, even pre-COVID, one of the things that a lot of our government agencies have come to us with is having hand receipts. I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, have heard of that term. Knowing, okay, keeping accountability track, keeping track of who is accountable for that asset. So Bob gets a new computer, but we have a hand receipt generated from Archibus that Bob signs, and that gets scanned and then put back into Archibus to track the record. So we have that governmental required record of the asset that Bob has, as well as property passes, which are a lot of agencies have it to where to get out of the building with your laptop through security, you've got to present a property pass that says this is the barcode of the asset that I have, and I'm authorized to take it off property. All of those can be tracked and generated within Archibus as well, and that's something that just assets have been really hot pre-COVID, but especially during COVID. I'll hand it back to Bob and Kathy.
Great. So we're going to have the County of San Bernardino overview with Kathy Cook and Heather Petit. I've been working with Kathy and Heather for over 16 years in the Archibus application, and so I'm going to turn it over to Kathy. Kathy, take it away. Kathy, you're on mute, or Heather, you may need to take over.
Sorry, I've got it. I was on mute. Sorry, Bob. I've been with the county for almost 15 years now, and it's been an adventure. I came from the private sector, and coming to the public sector was a great change for me. The county is, like it says here on this slide, it's the largest county in the contiguous United States. It's huge. It's 20,000 square miles. You can take probably 4 or 5 states from the East Coast and put them in the county, and there's still room left over. We have 1,436 active buildings at this time. They're both leased and owned, and we're pushing 13 million gross square feet with 30,000 plus employees. And the buildings range in use from regional park picnic shelters to communication sites, towers, to generator buildings, to detention centers, to office buildings. I mean, the spectrum goes from one end to the other, and it's all time consuming. We manage everything, all their leases, all the, you name it, we manage it. It's just, there's a lot to it. So it's very time consuming, and it's Heather and me that takes care of all this.
Very good. I'm going to ask a couple questions at this point in time. Kathy, I know this is a little bit of a sensitive subject, but I think it highlights the real power of Archibus. In 2015, the County of San Bernardino went through a terrorist attack. It was quite public. And from my understanding, reviewing what went on there, Archibus played a key role in the emergency response and the return of that terrorist attack. Do you mind spending a few minutes on how that works?
No, I will. It's something that anybody that was at the county at the time will never forget. The folks that were impacted by this, I mean, first, everybody in the county was impacted by what happened. The environmental health group was offsite at a conference center having their Christmas party. It was December 8th. December 8th, I think it was. December 2nd.
Yes.
And they were offsite having their Christmas party. And one of the members of the Environmental Health Department left the party, went home, got his wife, got all their guns, and went back to the party and started killing people. It was a terrorist attack. He was of Islamic Muslim descent. He had his own terrorist agenda, and it went on from there. And then what happened was the people that were mostly affected were from the second floor of the building that I sat in, and Heather and I both sat in at the time, from the other side of the building. It was 12,000 square feet of people, and there were like 8,000 square feet of people from another building that was in Rancho Cucamonga. And there were 13 people were killed. Tens and tens and tens were wounded, traumatized, etc. People still think about it constantly. They're working on a memorial for it still to this day. They're working on the memorial for it. It's still hard to talk about. I mean, I was looking through my photos the other day, and I actually found a picture of the bullet-ridden SUV that I took that was sitting in the back of the sheriff's crime unit right after it happened. What Archibus was tasked with doing was, I got a call the day after it happened, is what the HR folks and what the board of supervisors and management decided is these people couldn't come back to work and go back to work in the same space that they had left. It would be too traumatizing for them to go back to the exact same office spaces that they were in before this happened. Because this guy worked in the same space that they sat in. I mean, he sat right next to somebody in that office space. So they decided that they needed to reconfigure, redo, revamp, repaint, remodel, whatever, the space that these folks were in. So they needed to find 12,000 square feet one place and 5,000 to 8,000 square feet someplace else that these folks could sit in for 6 to 9 months while their existing space was demoed and remodeled. So Archibus, this is what Archibus does. They called me and said, Kathy, you need to find us some space. So I went into Archibus and went searching for contiguous vacant space. And I found the space, I found the floor plans, and we just happened to have some vacant space that was that size that we were getting ready to remodel for somebody else, that I was able to give them floor plans and give them the vacant space that was close enough to meet their needs, that they were able to quickly remodel and set up furniture for these folks to go back into, that they could sit in this space for long enough that they were able to remodel the other space so they could move back into their former space, totally separate and different than it was before. 9 months later, the following September, I believe it was, they moved back into the existing space that they had before, but it was totally different than it was before the terrorist attack.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm now going to ask Heather. Heather, we've been working together for over 16 years, and I remember the very first day that I met you and Ruth and Bruce. I was down for 3 days, and Bruce had asked me to train you and Ruth on the Archibus application. And one of the things that he wanted was to have his staff, you and Ruth, be able to manage the application as best they could. Mm-hmm. And one of the policies of the county is that only county employees can touch keyboard and mouse and monitor. And so I was there for 3 days, and one of the things that we did was I trained you on how to upgrade Archibus from one version to another. That was the big issue on your side. So right. Can you talk a little bit about that meeting and the effects of that training?
Yeah, you know, the meeting was very informative. I learned a lot. Being able to do upgrades and learning how to do those gave me a really good working knowledge of the Archibus database and made troubleshooting and development so much easier by understanding, and you know, because I can now spit out, you know, that, you know, the site ID is in, you know, how many different tables. And so economically, the county also has saved close to somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 over the years with all of the upgrades that I've done. And I've done
easy.
Yeah, easy. And I've done probably close to 6 or 7, starting with you training us from version 14 to version 16. Some of those have been the major version upgrades of 16, 18, 21, and recently 23. But in there in between, we did some of the .2s and the .3s. You guys came in and helped us go to version 20 and come back to out of the box to help us control our customized fields, because we had gotten to a point where we had staff members that weren't using the Archibus schema wizard to add or change fields. And so when we were doing upgrades, those fields would get lost and then the data wouldn't come over. And so we had all sorts of issues with that. So that was a learning, something that we learned along the way is, you must use that Archibus Schema Wizard to do those upgrades, to make them as easy as possible. They're difficult to begin with, and then it's easier when you are actually using the tools that Archibus has created. A couple other things that learned throughout the process of being the upgrades and doing them throughout the years is to always comment on your customized fields, what they're for, who put them in there, and when they were added, because it always makes it easier when somebody goes, well, why are we tracking this, or why do we have a customized field there? You kind of know already what it's for, and we know we have to bring it over. The final thing would be just documentation. I am a huge proponent of documenting as much as possible. So, documenting those procedures and how you do that is tremendous, a tremendous help in upgrades.
Great, thank you. So Kathy and Heather, you've been using Archibus for over 20 years, and you're one of the few installations in government that I've seen that uses every application except for the environmental sustainability. You use lease management, portfolio management, you use asset tracking, you do preventive maintenance, on-demand maintenance, you do space management. Talk to me about the length and breadth of this application and how it is leveraged in the county. I also want you to talk a little bit about how it has been customized to feel like a county application, not an off-the-shelf application.
All right, let me go first, Heather. First, when Jeff had his graph up there that showed all the different modules and all the different sub modules inside each one, I'm like, we don't use every single one. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh God, we use a lot. Oh, we use that. And we don't, oh, we use that. I'm like, oh, we use that. Oh, we have that. We have that. We have that. I'm like, oh crap, we do use all that. And we use quite a bit of it. There's some that we have that are new and we're just starting to use them. There's ones that we have that we haven't used yet, but we've talked a lot about using them. So there's a lot of them that we do have that we have leveraged them and used them a lot. We use space is huge. Obviously, 12 million, 13 million square feet. Space is huge. Leasing and real property management is huge. Heather can talk about facilities way better than I can because she is intimately involved with how facilities management works and making sure that they stay on track and everything else. She knows their ins and outs way better than I do and understands how the kind of maintenance side of things works and everything else. But we've really tried to make it work as well for them as we can. We've tried to modify things to make it so it looks and feels the way they being the agents, the leasing agents, that they want it to look and feel, so they are comfortable with it. That it's as easy for them as possible, but not so far reaching outside of Archibus that it's, totally changed and totally modified and customized, because that's our thing, is we don't want to customize it beyond recognition, because that's what got us in trouble the last time. That's what we did. And we being not me or Heather, but someone else. But we use a lot of stuff. We use some environmental stuff. We use condition assessment. We use leasing. We use space. We use
the energy
project
management.
Yeah, we use project management. We use all kinds of stuff. We could just go on and on. The different stuff that we use.
In a way, we've customized it to where it doesn't necessarily look like it's out of the box. Is that we've we've matched the colors of the county colors, our branding, to into Archibus. We've got it where, you know, there's a picture of our county government center as, you know, you go to the homepage of it, and a lot of them utilize homepages where they can use favorites and have things set in their own particular way to make it where they know exactly where they have to go to do what they need to do. They use our facility side, they use a lot of the metric. And so they've got metrics on their home pages, and it allows them to see at a glance, you know, the number of, we track shop hours, you know, how many hours the guys are staying in the shop doing work on certain activities. And our facilities managers can see at a glance how many hours our guys are in the shop. Where, you know, if it's getting too high, then they can kind of, you know, scale it back and say, hey, why are you in the shop, you know, and figure out how to readjust, you know, work request assignments and things like that. So we use it quite a bit in giving them specific information that they're actually looking for. And we get random requests for various information that a lot of times turns into they need it on a regular basis, not just a one-off. And so we will add that information to their homepage to where they have it at their fingertips.
So
I think there were.
Oh, go ahead, Kathy. Go ahead.
I think the reporting side of Archibus is the thing that surprises people the most. You know, they're like, well, I need this, and this. And we're like, okay, we can do that. We can give you a report that shows that. And Heather does her, you know, little magical thing that she does and, you know, spits out a report and it shows them everything that they need. It's like, if we have the data, we can give you a report. I mean, that's not ever a problem. And they're always surprised, you know, happily surprised that we can give them any type of information that they need. They just don't realize the breadth of data that's available in Archibus until they start asking for stuff. I mean, I find it amusing sometimes. They're like, oh, really? That's in there? It's like, what do you think we do? It's funny sometimes.
So Kathy and Heather, one of the things I'd like to kind of help the audience understand is there's a couple of really strong things that have happened at the county. Terry Thompson, who is a director, give me his title, I think he's a director of all corporate real estate, and
yes.
Jennifer have embraced this application and have taken it to the board and has taken it across the entire county, and we produced reports that are strategic for Terry and Jennifer, even to the point to where the board has allowed the continuation of the Archibus application with RSC without a legal RFP response for a time frame, and then they're going to go out to RFP again. But what my point is that it's not just used by the individual contributor. We're now up at the CNV level looking at this data strategically. The other thing I want to ask Heather is, Heather, I think we're synchronizing Archibus with 2 or 3 or 4 applications, finance, HR, all that type of information to bring a full breadth of total cost of ownership. Can you talk to those things?
Yeah, we do. We have a we use the energy management system. We bring in our utility payment data for them to analyze our you know, the amount each department within the county pays for utilities and goes down to the building level. And we bring that in on a daily basis from the utility payment system into Archibus to utilize the reporting aspect. We also bring in our cost centers and other billing information from our SAP system on a biweekly basis. And actually, I just got contacted last week that we're actually going to start sending information over to our payroll system as far as the buildings, to where they can track who's in which building. So we're going that way also. And we also send the building information over to our technology department, to where they have their own little GIS group, and they put it onto a layer for our ArcGIS, where we can have an overview and a flyover of all of the county buildings over there. So we do inbound and outbound data to various systems throughout the county.
Great, thank you. James, I'm going to turn it over to you to go over the state of Montana. So if you don't mind, let me give you a minute to get ready for that, and then I'll have you kind of review the state of Montana.
Actually, Bob, I'm going to let Jeff do that, because Jeff has been with Russ for the past almost decade to build the project and help Russ get to where he is. So we're going to let Jeff talk through that. And for what it's worth, Russ was called into a meeting at the state, so he's going to try to join late, but he did, as I know everyone on this call knows watching the webinar, when administrators call, you answer the phone. So it's Russ is apologetic for being late, but Jeff definitely can speak to this. Thank you, Jeff.
Certainly, and I certainly don't want everyone to think it takes 10 years to implement Archibus. It just took us that long to get it going. So as a matter of fact, so the state of Montana, quick information, the total population of the state is only about 1.1 million square feet. They've got about 147 million square miles of space. So not quite as large as the state of California, but it's pretty large. They've got a state building inventory, about 5,000 buildings, or almost 23 million square feet. One of the, they've been waiting for, they've seen a need for having some sort of tool to go out and document their building inventory, keep track of deferred maintenance, and those kinds of things for well over 20 years or so. They had kind of relied on a tool that was assembled, I guess, or created by one of the universities to go out and do kind of condition assessments and things like that. It really wasn't used widespread across the entire state for so long. 2017, legislature passed some laws saying, they need to go out and identify what is in the building, the state inventory as far as real estate goes, and identify the funding sources for operations and maintenance of those buildings. Some agencies have their own revenue streams, such as the Department of Transportation. They have gas tax and things like that. Parks and Wildlife, they may have hunting, fishing licenses and things like that. So they have a revenue stream coming into their agencies, and those funds can be used for operations and maintenance of their buildings. Many of the agencies don't have a revenue stream like that. So those buildings would be eligible for monies from the general fund, and so they have to be appropriated through the legislature like that. But they didn't really have a good way of understanding which was which, how many buildings were out there, who was funded from what source, and things like that. And so we worked with Russ and his team. Actually, they engaged a firm to come in and help them design a facility condition assessment strategy, I guess, for the statewide organization. Identifying, what types of information do we want to gather? Are we looking at kind of components of systems, or are we just looking kind of at the general level of systems, the HVAC or foundation or plumbing systems? Or we're going to look at the whole thing, or we're going to take it down to the individual, fan coil unit and things like that. So they went through, they developed a list of items. Okay, this is what we want to know about. They were going to be using their state employees to go out and do the assessments, because the legislature wouldn't fund them hiring someone to go out and do this, so they had to do it in-house. So we, working with them, we took their list of information that they identified as being critical for this project. We implemented Archibus for them, and they're using the Archibus mobile platform to go out, design their surveys, capture their information, and then report it back to Russ and his organization. And Russ is charged with kind of the overall, he works in this, leads the state architect's office, so he's kind of responsible for reporting back to the legislature. Here's what we have. Here's what's here's where our deficiencies are. Here's what we need to do to fix it.
Awesome. James, do we have any questions for Jeff on the state of Montana?
We do, and I'll I'll tag team with Jeff on answering them, because we know what we prepped this with Russ ahead of time. So one of the things that Russ had mentioned and Jeff had mentioned here is really, it's a statewide inventory. So one of the challenges and opportunities really within Russ's organization, so he's over admin, Department of Administration for the state. They're tasked with managing all of the buildings, but you've got university systems, you've got government affairs side, you've got a bunch of different agencies are also tenants of buildings, so they do their own assessments. And one of the opportunities that Russ has had through this project is pulling together a cross-functional group between different agencies within the state to develop one method to tracking the data for condition assessments, and trying to then take within that process, have it simplified in a sense of, when Jeff looks at a deficiency and James looks at a deficiency and Bob looks at it or Kathy looks at it, the four of us are going to see it differently through our own lens, if you may, but we need to be able to assess it the same way. So Russ is very involved with NASFA, the North American State Facilities Administrators organization, and has engaged with a number of other states on how they do it, and has done a really good job of not just bringing a cross-functional team within the state agencies of Montana, but throughout additional states to help leverage what others have done and build really a best-in-class approach to how Montana does this from a condition assessment perspective within different agencies now doing following the same process. So that's been one of the fun opportunities that has been years in the making, but has been exciting to be able to see come together through that. One of the things on the bottom bullet of this, and part of this, and it was actually this project's been in the making for 20 years from Russ's perspective. He's been driving it much longer than we've been talking with him, and even Jeff has been talking with him. But what he's been looking for and come across, he was looking for an easy button to procurement. And I'm sure everyone on the webinar knows that procurement, you've got specific procurement laws you have to follow and policies and practices. There are contract vehicles out there, and Russ was able to leverage the NASPO contract, which is a multi-state contract pre-competed that you can buy off of. So really, it made his path to procurement, once he found the tool he wanted, it made it very straightforward for him to be able to go out and get the tool that he wanted to get. So figuring out, as you're looking at solutions and looking at, once you have the funding for it, how to procure those, seeing if there are any master contract agreements in place within your own government, whether it's state, local, rolling up to the state level or even federal level, if there are avenues that you can't procure on, whether it's NASPO, GSA, or other avenues. There are a lot of different procurement vehicles out there that can help you get to where you want to be once you've identified exactly what it is you want to get. I think with that, looking at the time, those are the keys that we wanted to touch on, Bob. So I know we've got time for, you wanted to have some interactivity potentially here from the attendees, so I'll turn it back to you.
So yeah, this is the time where we turn it over to the audience and ask you to ask us any questions. We've got great panelists here about anything you've heard or any other subject you want to hear about IWMS or situations like that. So I think you can either unmute yourself or you can ask a question in the chat. Gladys, they do have the ability to unmute themselves. Is that correct?
They can either go ahead and key your questions into the questions panel, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Any questions from any of the attendees? Well, I'm never shy on questions, so I have a few more. You know, both these systems are quite heavily used by multiple departments. So Kathy and Heather and James and Jeff, talk to us about the roles based in Archibus. And so for Kathy and Heather in particular, we've got Steve Panawan and Stephen Castile, who are in the energy management side of the County of San Bernardino. And when they pop into Archibus, the only thing they see is the energy usage of their buildings. It actually allows them to be focused. Talk to us about the roles and how you set those roles up and how important is it that roles are set up in this application?
Heather can talk about this way better than I can, but I know we have gone heavily towards roles-based assignment of responsibilities. You know, I think that's pretty much how we do it now. Right, Heather?
Gladys, you got to unmute. You got to unmute Heather. She's been muted and she can't unmute herself.
I did that on purpose. I will continue to speak for Heather. We use roles now.
Yeah,
we're roles based.
Yeah, we are roles based. We have roles set up for a bunch of different groups to where they can only see data and processes that they've been authorized to access. Everybody within the county does have access to Archibus because they're the ones that they will submit the work request tickets. So we have a kind of a standard role that we assign everybody, but then there's those that go in and do things like our finance group that deals with the energy, they can see the energy stuff. Our leasing group, they get into the lease console. And so it's been very easy. It helps us know, you know, when we have a new employee or somebody that's going to be adding it, we go, okay, who should we mimic their access for? And it makes it extremely simple to get new users and let them only see and get comfortable with what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you, Kathy and Heather. That's awesome. Kathy and Heather, how many Archibus users do you have at the county? Is it 20? Is it 50? Is it 100? Is it 200?
It's hard to say. I mean,
yeah, I mean, in general, we have all 20 to 30,000 county employees can access it and submit work requests. When you're talking users of particular, you know, of specific group, you know, specific groups that access like our work request guys and you know, our craftspeople and our supervisors and things, we're probably looking around 250 to 300 users.
And those are recurring facilities people and leasing people that use it daily.
Yeah.
And then probably a couple of thousand on top of that use it intermittently to submit requests and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this might be for Heather, because I think, Kathy, you came in after the implementation. Clearly, Archibus is scalable. You can see that We've got two of the largest entities here, state of Montana and the county of San Bernardino. Heather, do you remember when you first rolled it out? Did you take it bite-sized or roll the whole thing out at first? And talk about that journey.
Yeah, the county first the first implementation of Archibus for the county was in 2002, and at that time it was space. They converted from an old Access database to Archibus, and then after that we added on to with leasing. And by the time I came onto it in 2005, we were getting our facilities management work request, the building operations up and running. So it took us 2-3 years to kind of get the main chunks done. And in the last few years is when or probably in the last 10 years, we added the energy management piece. And now I actually am working on a project now where we are getting our leasing acquisitions team into using the project management system or project management module to where they track, when they are acquiring a property, selling a property, just needing an appraisal or eminent domains, those types of things. We're putting that in. So it's a long process. We're constantly adding things, but we did start out in 2002 with space.
Cool. I see that Russ has joined us. Russ, let's give you kind of a couple minutes to tell us anything you want about the Archibus installation at state of Montana. Sure, if you'd like to, I can go back a couple slides. Let me do that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks, Jeff and James, you guys for covering for me. My apologies to the group for being late for those urgent phone calls, get over here now, kind of things. But yeah, if you guys covered this, I won't spend a ton of time. I would say we've been a long time coming with a facility assessment platform. And again, I don't want to plow ground that you guys have already covered. Been a great experience working with IMAGINiT, Infonaris, and the RAND team. We're in a state right now where we're loading the rest of the inventory and getting it all GIS'd and all that stuff. Then we're going to start launching into consolidating previous assessments in 9 different formats and getting our full cycle running forward and getting real good time data. One thing I would throw in there is the one thing that was very important to us, and it was a little bit of challenge, was making sure our cost information was current. So the guys did a good job of melding in RS means, which is what we chose to be get our subscription there, keep that updated so that we had, if you will, real-time cost information for our deficiencies and our backlog. So again, my apologies for being late, but I'll be happy to answer any questions about the issues, the topic.
So Russ, how many applications within Archibus does the state use?
Right now, this is the primary use. We have dabbled in the work order system, and we're very interested in the space management, space analysis platform you guys have, we've been interested in that for quite a while, and the COVID and the restructuring that we may end up with, I think will certainly help us. We're getting ready to launch an RFP for space and HR help, and that should be coming out pretty soon. And when I say that, it's not relative to a platform that we would pick. It's relative to architects, engineers, HR specialists, and so forth to revamp state office space and kind of make use of a lot of the private sector and other state entities who've done that already.
So Russ, with as far and wide as the state of Montana is, you're talking about almost 23 million square feet in 5,000 buildings. Are all 5,000 buildings within the Archibus application? And what's your smallest building and what's your largest building? And how far away are they?
Yeah, we're going to put everything in the inventory. Then we've separated it based upon a funding criteria as far as assessments go. So there are the many buckets of money that a large public organization has, and many people probably familiar with, that fund certain types of buildings. And based upon the type of funding that's in your bucket, depending on the agency, you may be required to have an assessment. So out of all 5,000 buildings, we actually are mandated to assess 500 of them. However, that 500 represents greater than half of the value of the entire portfolio. So I give you for instance, within the 5,000 buildings, the Department of Transportation and Fish and Wildlife and Parks each have about 1,200 each, so they make up about half of that inventory. However, those buildings or structures all count as one, even if it's a loader shed, right? Or if it's a fishing access site within Fish and Wildlife and Parks, and there's a rest area there. All of those buildings count as one, just like the state capitol counts as one. But we don't have to assess all of the fishing access sites or loader sheds or anything like that. So we have to put them in the inventory, and the platform works great for that kind of information. Then our assessment moving forward, I say, would be, of the 22 million square feet and more than half of the replacement value, I think we have to assess a little over 14 million of that 22 million square feet. So 500 buildings, 14 million square feet is greater than half of the replacement value. So it's a big task, and a lot of travel involved, as you can tell. That's why I threw the comparison in with California. So we're less than 20 million square miles smaller, but don't have near the population centers. And a lot of road miles, a lot of windshield time, but it's part of why we love it here.
So Russ, if you were to identify one aha moment for your supervisor with this rollout, what would that be?
It's a good question. We had a lot of conversation about the platform and the data. I think it was discovering the level of assessment that we could do within the platform, that the things that operational maintenance folks always want to know, need to know, and now we can consolidate that into a central location, hopefully be more efficient, make better decisions from a capital planning, and the limited deferred maintenance dollars that are available was really gonna jump out and really help us a bunch.
So if I could put words in all three panelists' mouth, it appears that the reoccurring theme with the Archibus installation for both the state and the county is that there is data there that is surprisingly accessible to all of your staff and your superiors and anybody who wants to do strategic decisions.
Yep.
And I think that is kind of the theme of what I'm hearing from you guys. All right.
Absolutely.
We only have a couple of minutes left. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to make sure that everybody who's on the phone has an opportunity to ask a question. So one last time, do we have any questions from our audience?
I have a question coming through, Bob. How do you handle upgrades, or do you have an upgrade strategy?
Russ and Heather?
we built the subscriptions and licensure into our base budget moving forward. So the my shop here, State Architecture and Engineering Division, will contract for the upgrades, the licensures, and all that stuff out of our shop, so that everyone in the state who is a facilities person doesn't have to worry about those costs. And working with the guys to keep the updates in there, we'll hand it all out of my shop.
Yeah, we do essentially the same thing. We already plan for the cost of the budget. Our real estate services department takes care of it. And here at the county, we kind of pick and choose which upgrades to do based on what has been changed and what new needs we may have. We're not always on the latest and greatest, and we typically don't like to be the first onto a new upgrade, but we are actually working and should be end of August probably on 26.1. So we kind of keep up with it, doing an upgrade every couple of years, but we evaluate each upgrade before we do it.
Well, and to add on to that, as we said earlier, you don't rely on the vendor for the most part to do the upgrades. Heather has done all the upgrades in the last 16 years, so in-house. And you can do them internally if you want. We can teach you how to do that, or you can use your vendor. I need to be very sensitive of time. We're 1 minute over. I want you to please complete the survey. Gladys, if there's not any more questions, we'll take another question if there is, but we should launch the survey at this point in time.
There is one comment.
Thank you, panelists. Okay, yep, go ahead.
The one comment, great webinar. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you all very much.
Oh,
and with
thanks.
that, we can end, we can end the webinar. And everyone, if you would, please take a moment to complete our survey. Thank you.
Before we go, I want to thank the panelists and the moderators for being here today, and thanks for the attendees for coming and listening. If you like this, we can plan other ones and give you more information. We've got great experts here that are using Archibus, and would love to give you as much information as possible. Please reach out. We'll give you answers if you need them. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.